The exhaustion you feel right now isn't a character flaw, it's a signal your soul has been sending for months, maybe years, and you keep mistaking it for laziness or weakness. You are built for rhythms of silence that your life has slowly erased. By the end of these next few minutes, you'll understand why the holiest person who ever walked the earth kept disappearing into deserted places, and why your refusal to do the same is quietly draining the life out of you. Read the Gospels carefully, and a strange pattern emerges. The Son of God, with limited time, infinite crowds, and the most important mission in human history, kept walking away from the people who needed him. Mark records it almost in passing. Luke chapter 5 verse 16 says it plainly, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." Notice the word often. This wasn't a one-time retreat. It was a rhythm, a discipline, a non-negotiable. Stop and feel the weight of that. Jesus had 3 years. 3 years to launch a movement that would carry across every continent and outlast every empire. Sick people were lined up at his door. Demons were terrorizing villages. The disciples were stumbling over basic truths. And what does he do? He gets up before dawn and walks into the wilderness. Alone. If anyone could have justified skipping Solitude, it was him. He still did it. So what does he know about being human that you've forgotten? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. You've been taught, by a culture allergic to silence, that productivity is proof of value, that stillness is wasted time, that if your calendar isn't bursting, you must not matter. And so you fill every gap, the commute, the meal, the moment between getting in bed and falling asleep, with noise. A podcast, a scroll, a glance at the inbox. Your soul has been screaming for quiet, and you've been handing it more input. That tight, low-grade dread you carry around, the one that hums under every conversation, that's a soul that hasn't heard its own thoughts in weeks. Look at the moments Jesus chose solitude. After his baptism, before the temptations, he goes into the wilderness for 40 days. Before choosing the 12 apostles, Luke chapter 6 verse 12 tells us he spent the entire night praying alone on a mountain. After hearing about John the Baptist's execution, Matthew chapter 14 verse 13 says he withdrew by boat to a solitary place. After feeding the 5,000, when the crowds wanted to make him king, he went up the mountainside by himself. See the pattern? Solitude bookended the decisions that mattered most. It came before big choices and after big victories, before the storm and after the success. Both moments are dangerous to the soul, and Jesus knew it. You're brilliant at handling the storm and terrible at handling the success. After a win, you celebrate, you spend, you scroll, you accept every invitation. After a loss, you isolate in the wrong way, through numbing, scrolling, sleeping the day away. Jesus did the opposite. He went toward God in both directions, and he went alone. The question is why? The answer has nothing to do with introversion versus extroversion. Jesus withdrew because clarity has a sound, and that sound is silence. In 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 11 through 13, Elijah is on a mountain, broken, suicidal, hiding in a cave. A great wind tears through, an earthquake follows, then fire, and God is in none of them. Then, after the fire came a gentle whisper. That's when God speaks. The Hebrew word there can be translated as the sound of thin silence. God's voice was hiding inside the quiet that Elijah almost ran from. Your life has wind, earthquake, and fire on permanent loop. Notifications, deadlines, group chats, algorithm feeds engineered by people whose salaries depend on you never being still. You keep waiting for God to shout over the noise. He won't. He didn't even do that for the prophet on Horeb. He waited for the silence. So if you can't hear him, The problem is your volume. This is where most people stop. They hear pray more or carve out quiet time, and they nod and forget. They treat it like a wellness tip. Let's go deeper, because Jesus didn't go to lonely places to relax. He went to wrestle. In Luke chapter 22, verses 41 through 44, in Gethsemane, he prays in such agony that his sweat becomes like drops of blood. That's the hardest conversation of his life, and he has it where no one can interrupt. Solitude is where he brings the things too heavy to say out loud in company. The fear, the dread, the honest, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. When was the last time you said anything that raw to God? Not the curated prayer you'd say at a small group. The real one. The one with the trembling and the why and the I don't understand. That prayer needs solitude the same way a surgery needs sterility. You can't perform it in a crowded room. And here's what the modern soul keeps missing. You avoid solitude because you're afraid of who you'll meet there. Strip away the noise, and the first voice you hear is your own. The unflattering version. The resentments you've been pretending to forgive. The ambition you've been pretending isn't there. The grief you buried under a calendar. The faith you've been faking for 2 years. Silence is a mirror, and most people would rather smash the mirror than look. But Jesus walked into that mirror every single time. He walked out of it strengthened, not shattered. The difference is that he brought the Father with him. Solitude without God collapses into isolation, and isolation will eat you alive. Psalm chapter 46 verse 10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." The stillness is the road. He is the destination. There's a writer from the Egyptian desert in the 4th century, Abba Moses, who told a younger monk one of the strangest pieces of advice ever recorded. The young man came asking for wisdom, expecting a long teaching. Abba Moses said, "Go, sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything." That was the curriculum. The cell was the small bare room where the monks slept and prayed, stripped of distraction, stripped of company, stripped of the version of yourself you perform for others. In that stripping, the monk would meet the only 2 presences that mattered: his actual self and the God who was with him the whole time. You don't need a desert. You don't need a monastery. You need 15 honest minutes where the phone is in another room and your soul is allowed to breathe. Start smaller than you think. 5 minutes tomorrow morning before you reach for the screen. Sit. Skip the devotional for a moment. Skip the worship playlist. Just sit and let the silence be loud. Let your soul finish the sentences it's been trying to say. Then open the Word. Read slowly. Let one verse stop you. Stay there. When the discomfort hits, and it will, because withdrawal from constant input feels physically wrong at first, stay seated. That discomfort is detox. Your soul is learning to be a soul again instead of a content consumption machine. The skeptic in you wants to push back here. You'd argue that you're not Jesus, that he could afford solitude because he didn't have your responsibilities. The kids, the job, the bills, the aging parent. That objection is fair, and it deserves a real answer. Jesus had a mission that made yours look manageable. He had 3 years to save the human race. He had crowds chasing him across lakes. He had a cross waiting at the end of the road, and he still walked away. The work he was doing required a source his audience couldn't supply. That's the part you've inverted. You think solitude is what you do when the work is done. Jesus treated it as what makes the work possible. A doctor who never sleeps becomes the patient. A well that's never refilled becomes a hole. You've been trying to pour from a cup you stopped filling sometime in your early 20s, and you keep wondering why every relationship feels heavier than it used to. There's a quieter cost too, one nobody talks about. Without solitude, You lose the ability to distinguish God's voice from your own anxiety. They start sounding identical. You make decisions out of panic and call it conviction. You stay in things God told you to leave because the noise drowned out the leaving. You leave things God told you to stay in because the urgency felt holy. Discernment dies in noise. Jesus, in John chapter 5, verse 19, said something startling. The Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing. How did he see? In the quiet, on the mountain. Before dawn, the miracles you read about in the daylight were downloaded in the dark. You want that kind of clarity. You're trying to get it through more input, more sermons, more books, or podcasts about faith. All of it is downstream of the one thing you keep skipping, the room where it's just you and him and nothing else. So tonight, before you sleep, do something small and uncomfortable. Put the phone in the kitchen, sit on the edge of the bed for 3 minutes, say nothing, then say one honest sentence to God. Not a prayer you've heard before, a sentence that's actually yours. Maybe it's, "I'm tired and I don't know why." Maybe it's, "I think I've been hiding from you." Maybe it's just, "Help." Then listen, not for thunder, for the gentle whisper that Elijah almost missed. This is the rhythm Jesus modeled with his whole life. Crowds, then solitude. Service, then silence. Miracle, then mountain. He let the well stay deeper than the work. Every time you skip the well to keep up with the work, you tell your soul that productivity is more sacred than presence. It never was. The lonely place is an invitation sent by a God who would rather meet you in the quiet than shout over the noise you keep choosing. Your exhaustion is the envelope. Open it. Tomorrow morning, before the world tells you who to be, go find a chair, a corner, a closet, anywhere the noise can't follow. Bring nothing but your honest self and an open Bible. Stay longer than feels comfortable. Then watch what begins to grow in the soil that silence finally lets see the sun.